This has been so far, by far, the busiest day for the Miami Hurricanes in this transfer portal cycle. The Hurricanes have added a new cornerback, a new defensive tackle, a new long snapper, a new kicker. To all of them, I say, welcome to the U.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Shout out to the everydayers, and thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're available free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am host Alex Donno, and you guys know the drill. When I leave town, when I go on vacation, that's when Miami lands new players. And not only did we get a 2-for-1 today, we got a 4-for-1 because in the early afternoon, Miami Hurricanes have landed the second-ranked defensive tackle in the transfer portal. This was a player we really wanted, especially since Miami missed out on Keyshawn Silver from Kentucky, who decided to go to USC. Obviously, the one that Miami did land comes from a smaller school, but he has an opportunity to be even better, very disruptive, rushing the passer from the interior. The Hurricanes have landed former defensive tackle, former Louisiana Tech defensive tackle, I should say, David Blay. And Blay comes into this season 6'4", 303 pounds. He was the second-ranked defensive tackle prospect in the transfer portal right now, a 4-star prospect in the country. This is a guy who this past season was first-team All-Conference USA, produced 46 tackles, 13 pressures, 11 tackles for loss, and 6.5 sacks. So that was the first success story that Miami had today in the transfer portal. And again, guys, we know defensive tackle has been a big area of need for Miami. You're losing a lot of your upperclassmen from this past year. Simeon Barrow is going on to the NFL. Marley Cook and C.J. Clark are out of eligibility. So Hurricane, and I like the defensive tackle room now heading into next year because David Blay, I think, is a starting caliber guy. And there were some really good schools after him, by the way. Miami gets his commitment over the likes of Illinois, Oklahoma, Penn State, Kentucky, and USC. Those were among some of the suitors for 6'4", 303-pound David Blay, who not only has elite explosion, but he's also got very good size. And I know that there have been years over the past couple of years when sometimes Miami gets players out of the transfer portal, defensive tackles. You're like, hey, this guy's 5'11". No, David Blay, 6'4", 303 pounds. This is a good land for Miami. He just had a Miami Hurricanes visit. It obviously went very well because he has decided he wants to be a Cane. And so you look at what could be Miami's, let's say, top 3 in no particular order, defensive tackle rotation for next year. You add Blay into that mix, who looks like a starting caliber player. Of course, he's got 1 year of eligibility left, by the way. So you're adding experience onto that defensive line. Miami has Ahmad Moten, who had a really good second half of the season. And Moten looks like he's ready to be a full-time starting caliber player this coming season. And you also have Justin Scott, who true freshman this year, didn't play a whole lot in 2024, but he seems to be developing well. And I think Justin Scott is going to be someone who's going to be ready for a lot more work this coming season. So if your top 3 is a former 5-star top defensive line recruit in Justin Scott, Ahmad Moten, who is coming on very strong, and David Blay, who just came in from Louisiana Tech, Miami's in much better shape on the defensive line. And I hope that everyone who has been screaming for the past few days, we need more guys on defense. How come we're always talking about which quarterbacks Miami's going after, and we're talking about which receivers they're going after? We need to fix that defense, which wasn't good enough this past season. Miami is absolutely working on that, as you can see, because Miami has added within the past few days Zechariah Poyser, who is the number 2 ranked safety in the transfer portal out of Jacksonville State. I think he's going to be a great add to Miami's defensive backfield. Miami adds the number 2 defensive tackle in the transfer portal in David Blay. And then Miami got another big defensive addition in the late afternoon. I almost missed this one because I was driving over. We're seeing our in-laws. We're doing the whole state of Florida holiday tour because my wife and I, we've got relatives who live all over the state. So we're in Fort Myers now. We're in the 239. Shout out to the 239. And I missed this initially while we were driving over here, that Miami also lands Michigan State transfer cornerback Charles Brantley. This was another one. He was on campus for the past couple of days. This guy is a proven commodity in the defensive backfield. He didn't allow a single touchdown in coverage this past year. 254 coverage snaps for Charles Brantley at Michigan State. Did not allow a single touchdown. And I like the mix that Miami has already been getting with transfer portal additions of, young guys with multiple years of eligibility left, like Zachariah Poyser, for example. And then you get some elder statesmen to help fill out that defense with players like David Blay and with Charles Brantley, the cornerback from Michigan State. And Miami is still looking at some younger defensive backs as well. Like we'll talk about Xavier Lucas in a little bit, because it seems like Wisconsin is trying to hold him hostage. But Xavier Lucas, there have been some links to Miami. He was one of the top true freshmen in the country this past year. And if Miami is able to find a way to land him, you would get another one who's got 3 years of eligibility left. You also have OJ Frederic, who's got 3 years of eligibility left. Zaquan Patterson, 3 years left. Ryan Mack, who spent some unfortunate time on the injury list this past year as a true freshman, he's got 4 years of eligibility left. So there are a lot of young possibilities in the defensive backfield, but you also need experience. Like, it is important to have. You think about the impact that Simeon Barrow had in one season at Miami as a super senior this past year. It's good to have experience like that, and hopefully David Blay can be that type of a player here, and Charles Brantley in the defensive backfield. But then it's also nice to be able to land some guys who are freshmen, sophomores, who you have time to kind of build around and develop. So, yeah, I mean, the other big one, Miami did land 2 other special teams commits that we'll talk about, but Charles Brantley was the other big one that Miami landed today. So let's hear more about him. I mentioned 254 coverage snaps, 0 touchdowns allowed. This player was sought after by Ole Miss, Illinois, UCF, among others. I think those were his 4 visits, were to Miami, UCF, Illinois, and Ole Miss. He's got 1 season of eligibility left. He's got 24 starts across 4 seasons at Michigan State. 6 foot tall, 174-pounder. Was targeted 38 times this past year, allowed just 14 catches, none of those for touchdowns. Of course, that's 36.9% completion against, for just 149 yards and a long of 27 yards. He intercepted 3 passes this past season, had 7 pass breakups. He's got 5 interceptions throughout his college career. So you see how he's been trending up. He's got 5 career interceptions. 3 of those happened this past season as a junior. So he's going to come to Miami for his final year of eligibility. He's a native of Venice, Florida. So this guy is someone who returns to the home state here, and it's nice to have him. From the Midwest back to the Sunshine State, Charles Brantley is a Miami Hurricane. And, it's no secret. We know Miami needs to revitalize the defense, because I know that one of the reactions that we've been watching these college football playoff games, by the way, the ACC's not been looking good. SMU got basically mercy ruled by Penn State earlier today. Kevin Jennings, interception after interception after interception. That was really ugly in Happy Valley. So, Penn State destroyed SMU. Clemson has had a couple of moments against Texas, but they're down big at the half. You thought Clemson was going to get a little momentum with an interception. It was a pick 6, but they called back the touchdown, and they had to settle for a field goal. So it looks like the ACC teams are getting waxed. We were also watching, Notre Dame completely obliterate Indiana last night. And some of there's a lot of hot takes that are coming out of that game. But a couple that I think about with Miami angles are, if you see, what Riley Leonard does as the starting quarterback at Notre Dame. He's the former Duke starting quarterback, has been at Notre Dame these past couple of years. Like, he's a really competent game manager, right? I mean, he's not Cam Ward. He doesn't have that sort of flash. He doesn't take over games, but he manages the offense well. They play complementary football. And, Notre Dame, they play a banged up Georgia in their next game. They have an opportunity to maybe get all the way to the championship game if they can keep rolling the hot set of dice there. So one of the takeaways is, hey, like, if Miami does end up going with Emory Williams as their starting quarterback next year. That's not guaranteed. Miami could still look at other transfer portal quarterbacks, but after missing out on John Mateer of Washington State, it's more and more likely that Emory Williams, who I believe in, I think Emory can be a very good quarterback, more and more likely he's going to be your starter next year. So one of the hot takes that's floating around from certain, people who cover Miami fans is, hey, like if you see what Riley Leonard is doing for Notre Dame, there's no reason why Emory can't be that good or maybe even a little bit better. You can win with a quarterback like that. And I'm not trying to limit Emory, but we all know he's not going to be as dynamic as Cam Ward. I mean, who is? And so, yeah, listen, you can absolutely win with a quarterback who doesn't set the world on fire every time they drop back. But if you're going to do that, you need to fortify the defense, which was a problem area this past year. I mean, Miami just has, because he's going to play in the bowl game, with Cam Ward, they've got the best quarterback in the country, and they still found a way to lose 2 games, miss out on the college football playoff, miss out on the ACC championship game, primarily because your defense let you down time and time again. So no matter who your quarterback is, you've got to fortify that defense. You've got to be able to help Emory Williams or whoever, and you've got to be able to, to give your quarterback something to work with. And another thing, because some people are bringing this up, I don't want to act like I'm completely sleeping on Luke Nickel, who has an opportunity. We've seen true freshmen win starting jobs before and thrive around college football. And Luke Nickel, his team, Milton, they're on an 18-game streak, undefeated this year. They just won their 2nd consecutive state championship. Nickel absolutely lit it up in the state championship game in Georgia. He was named Mr. Georgia football, top player in the entire Peach State, which is a very good state for high school football and for recruiting. And so don't completely rule out the idea that Luke, who's going to be coming in early, Nickel's going to be enrolling in January. Do not completely rule out the idea that he is capable for competing for that starting job year one. Obviously, on the surface, I would have my reservations about him being the year one starter, especially when you look at Miami's early season schedule. You've got to open against a college football playoff team right now. You open up against the Notre Dame Crying Irish, which is obviously going to be a really difficult game for a true freshman to make his first start. And then week 3, you've got to host the Florida Gators, who, look good, and they've been making a lot of noise in recruiting and in the transfer portal. So you have to wonder, even if Luke gets his time, year one, if he would potentially be named the week 1 starter, because 2 out of your first 3 games are an absolute gauntlet. Like, these are not, you don't have Bethune-Cookman and FAMU 2 out of the first 3 games. You've got Notre Dame, who's in the CFP, and Florida, who was one of the hotter teams in the country to finish the year, and they've made some good additions at the transfer portal. So that's something else to think about at the quarterback position. But, you don't need a Cam Ward to win in college football, but you do need to have around a quarterback who can make some big throws and manage games, and I think Emory Williams can do those things. You've got to have a very good running game, and I think Miami can absolutely have that this coming season, because bare minimum, you're going to have a dynamic duo of Mark Fletcher and Jordan Lyle. That's assuming Damian Martinez doesn't come back, because I think he's going to the NFL a year early. Your offensive line's going to be good, but you got to keep fixing that defense. And so, yeah, Miami may not be done making defensive adds. I hope they're not done. We've added a safety, a young safety with a lot of promise in Poyser. We've added a veteran, successful cornerback who was a lockdown guy this past year in Charles Brantley. And we added a playmaking defensive tackle coming off a 6.5 sack season, first team all-conference USA in David Blay. But I still think Miami could use at least one more defensive back and probably a linebacker, because we've seen Miami floating out the idea about a few linebackers as well. But I want to talk about a weird situation involving a transfer cornerback who could become a Miami target, but he's got to become available first. So what's the holdup? And I also want to talk about, unfortunately, Miami did lose one. Miami lost another one entering the transfer portal yesterday. And tight end Riley Williams, he means a lot to me. He is a show favorite. So we'll talk about all that and more. We're nowhere near done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. And by the way, I'm not in my usual environment. The acoustics in the room that I'm in probably suck right now, and I'm a little out of sorts from all the traveling today. But you guys know how it is. Whenever Donno leaves town, commitments or transfers always happen. And so I guess when Cristobal and Dennis Smith, D-Train, when they found out that I was going to be traveling and leaving town today, they're like, we're not just going to give this guy one new cane, not two, not three. We're going to give him 4 new Hurricanes today. We also have to talk about the special teams additions as well. So you guys want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Oh, my friends, I am only getting started with Rocket Mortgage. Rocket Money, this app has saved me so much money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That's definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I use it to cancel services that I wasn't really using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. We're proudly brought to you by FanDuel, and 'tis the season to win some money. If you've had your hunches and your hot takes heading into these college football playoff games and these bowl games, and the NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. It's truly thrilling. So, folks, you want to visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you so much for making this transfer portal episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I've also been doing some post-game work on the Locked On Network. We're going to have a live post-game show. You can find it on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. We're going to be talking about this Texas versus Clemson game, which is kind of trending towards being a beatdown. There have been some beatdowns in the CFP so far, so you'll join us after. We're going to be on live right after Texas and Clemson goes final, so make sure you check out our conversation about that as well right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So I mentioned Miami picking up second-ranked defensive tackle transfer David Blay from Louisiana Tech in the early afternoon. In the late afternoon, Miami added Charles Brantley, who I think was like the number 8 or number 9 corner in the transfer portal, and a really productive player. And then between those two adds, Miami also added a couple of, and these guys are not going to get talked about enough probably because we all take certain special teams aspects for granted. But Miami was able to add today a new long snapper, Adam Booker out of Charlotte, because Miami's veteran long snapper, Mason Napper the Snapper. I always thought that was a great name. His name is Napper. He's off. He's out of eligibility. So the Hurricanes needed to add a long snapper, and they did. They land Adam Booker, who's been very successful at Charlotte. And they also added former FAU kicker Carter Davis. And I know it's hard to get excited about these things, but your long snapping, you better hope you got that right, because you don't notice it unless something goes very wrong. And as far as adding the kicker, so this one, there's a couple of layers to this, because I know you might say, well, hold on, why are we adding a kicker? And this guy's career percentage is not very good. So I'm expecting the kicker that Miami added today, Carter Davis, it's looking like he's going to be a kickoff specialist. Because Miami has a very talented place kicker, Abram Murray, who's, of course, unfortunately, we're out of Borigali. There's no more Borigalis brothers. Andy Borigalis is off, hopefully, to the NFL. I know kicker jobs are hard to get, but he should get an opportunity somewhere. And he's been awesome here for the past 4 years. His brother, Jose, was awesome here prior to Andy arriving, but we're out of Borigalis brothers. So, I expect Abram Murray heading into his second year to be the guy who handles the field goal tries and the extra points. But I think Miami really felt strongly about making sure for kickoffs, they have someone who's got a booming leg. And that's what this new kicker has. He's got a booming leg, Carter Davis. And, because obviously Miami gave up, I think, 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns this year. I mean, Carter Davis apparently has, I think, 82% of his kickoffs are touchbacks, back of the end zone stuff. So that's what you need. Like, you want to limit, if you're concerned about your special teams coverage, or you're just concerned about giving other teams opportunities to take your kickoffs to the house, try to get someone who can boom it to the back of the end zone as much as possible. And I think that's what Miami has here. So do not discount the importance of adding special teams players. But the headline makers today, new defensive tackle, David Blay, and newly added cornerback, Charles Brantley out of Michigan State, was a huge ad. And there's something weird going on elsewhere. I want to pull up this shout out to Gabby Urrutia from Inside the U. See if I can pull up his X post here real quick, because another player that Miami has been linked to, by media reports, is to a player who's not officially in the transfer portal yet. South Florida native, former American Heritage standout. This would be, one of the top corners, especially young corners available once he officially hits the portal. Xavier Lucas from Wisconsin, right? I mean, will the hometown kid come home? But Gabby Urrutia writes today, sources tell me that Wisconsin cornerback Xavier Lucas wants to enter the transfer portal, but Wisconsin has yet to submit his paperwork. The 48-hour threshold has passed. Okay, I don't think they're allowed to do that. There's something weird going on here, because I don't think Wisconsin or anybody in college football is allowed to say, one of your players submits his pay. Hey, I filled out my forms. I need you to put me in the transfer portal. I don't think you can say no. I mean, maybe you can ask him, are you sure this is what you want to do? Maybe think on it for a couple days, but more than 48 hours has passed, which I think is by rule, they've got to submit him into the transfer portal. So I don't know if Wisconsin is like trying to claim, hey, teams have been trying to tamper with him, so we're not going to put him in the transfer portal. My theory is Wisconsin is probably so mad that they plucked Tyler Van Dyke from us last year that they're like, wait, we're not going to allow you to complete the Tyler Van Dyke for Xavier Lucas trade. There's no way. After you guys sold us a lemon, we're not going to send you one of our better players back in return. So I don't know what's going on, but hopefully maybe the situation is rapidly changing. And honestly, I hope that there is power in Gabby's tweet, if we still call them tweets. Like, I hope there's power in that, because if anyone in the Wisconsin administration or in their football front office sees now that the secret is out, that they're, for whatever reason, not letting this kid officially hit the portal, when I don't see why they're supposed to let him hit you can't hold the guy hostage. So hopefully there's some power in that tweet, and Wisconsin realizes we have to do what's right by Xavier Lucas. And if and when he officially hits the portal, I'm sure Miami would be aggressive. This is someone they recruited out of high school, and you've seen a theme. CJ Daniels, who Miami landed at wide receiver, a few days ago. A lot of times, the players Miami ends up landing in the portal are guys that they heavily recruited out of high school, and that was certainly the case for Xavier Lucas. Miami tried to make a late push for him before he ultimately last year ended up sticking with the Wisconsin Badgers, but now he's trying to hit the transfer portal. But Luke Fickell's got to let him in. Like, you got to let him in, Luke. The portal giveth, the portal also taketh away. And Juan, I think we definitely need a tight end. I think we do, because unfortunately, a player who is probably in line to be the starting tight end this upcoming season, Riley Williams, is entering the transfer portal, which makes me sad on so many levels. For one, I hate seeing so many of the class of 2023 players, because there have been a number of them. That was the foundation class for Miami. Obviously, there are still some of these guys left, like CeCe Maui-Noah and Ruben Bain and Mark Fletcher, who are, and Damari Brown, who are going to be like the backbones of your team for coming years. But also, you've lost a handful of these guys, which really makes me sad. Riley Williams was one of those, former 4-star tight end out of IMG Academy, who played quite a bit. He probably wished he had more opportunities to catch some passes, but he made some big plays, a lot of big blocks. You remember the play against Virginia Tech when Cam Ward almost got sacked twice and flipped it out to Riley Williams for the big gain. I mean, that was an awesome memory. And unfortunately, Williams has decided to hit the portal. From everything I can tell, I think this isn't like a money move or anything like that. He's from the Pacific Northwest originally. His family is, I think, in Oregon. It's either Oregon. I always get Oregon and Washington confused. So somewhere in that I think he's from Oregon, somewhere in that region. And, I've heard some rumblings about him being a little bit homesick. So I think he wants to transfer closer to the family. Like, I don't think it's a money grab. And Riley Williams he doesn't have that personality. He's not someone who's out there, looking for, big extra NIL bids or anything like that. So, I mean, it's been an honor covering him for the past couple of years. Shout out to Riley Williams' family, because these are awesome people. I've had many a conversation with his grandfather, conversations with his father. So I'm going to miss these guys, right? And I'll wish him all the best. As long as he doesn't end up a Gator or a Seminole, and I don't think he will, I will wish Riley Williams all the best in his future endeavors. But yeah, because of that, Miami probably needs a tight end. Now you have still some talent in that room. Elijah Lofton, I believe, is going to break out this coming year. That's not a secret. Elijah Lofton is already really good, and I think he's going to be a superstar at Miami. I like the players Miami is bringing in as true freshmen. We'll see like how year one ready they are once they get here for spring football. But Brock Schott and Luka Gilbert are really going to help this football team. Schott should be a really dynamic pass catcher. And Gilbert is gigantic. I think he can be, an asset in catching passes and in blocking. But yeah, you probably need to add another experienced tight end in the transfer portal. So I could see Miami looking, and they've already been looking around at a few like inline blocker types, like Cam McCormick clones, younger versions of Cam McCormick, I would suppose. They've been looking at some guys like that. So, and by the way, Elijah Lofton can block as well. He can do everything. So he's not strictly a pass catcher or a blocker. He does both of those things incredibly well. But all this to say, I'm really sorry to see Riley Williams go. And I never bash players when they enter the portal, and I will especially not bash Riley Williams, because I know whatever his reasons are for hitting the portal, there's nothing nefarious going on there. That young man and his family really love the University of Miami, and so I will wish him all the best. All right, so hopefully Luke Fickell allows Xavier Lucas to officially submit his paperwork, because there seems to be an administrative holdup there. And guys, I'm happy today. I'm so happy. Miami has made 4 transfer portal additions. Defensive tackle David Blay, veteran cornerback Charles Brantley. Those guys are both veterans with 1 year of eligibility left. And Miami also lands long snapper Adam Booker out of Charlotte and former FAU kicker Carter Davis, who's probably going to be a kickoff specialist here. Boom those kicks to the back of the end zone, my friend. So, yeah, folks, we appreciate if you're watching us live right now, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe to Locked On Canes on YouTube. If you're listening to the audio version, yeah, make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. And I'm going to have more to do today. And yeah, for Rich Jackson Carver, hopefully he gets some more work. I think he's more of a receiver, so hopefully he gets some more work this year. Fresh says Al Golden for the new DC. I want to say one thing about Al Golden before we sign off, okay? Because there was an article written, and like a prominent member of the media, reposted it today about how Al didn't really get a fair shot at Miami, and it was not his fault because that was after the Nevin Shapiro scandal, and he was working with 2 hands tied behind his back when he was here at Miami. And for those who don't know, You do if you watch the game last night. Certainly, Al Golden is the defensive coordinator for Notre Dame now, and their defense is ferocious and fantastic. So now we have some revisionist history going on there that, hey, Al Golden really should have been a great head coach here, but he wasn't given an opportunity. Okay. All I'm going to say about that is Al Golden was the reason for Al Golden's demise when he was the head coach at the University of Miami. Because seriously, there were obviously some things he did very well and a few good decisions that he made, but he completely cost himself any opportunity to succeed here by his refusal to fire his brother-in-law, who destroyed any opportunity Miami had at defensive success. Right? Because I know we come off a year where our defense let us down. The defense let us down a lot when Al Golden insisted on allowing Mark D'Onofrio, who's his brother-in-law, to be his defensive coordinator. Because I keep seeing people bring up, hey, look at how good Al Golden, who's the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame, look how good his defense is at Notre Dame. Well, you know what that tells me? Maybe Al Golden should have coached his own freaking defense when he was here. If Al Golden is such a good defensive coordinator, why did he hand the keys to D'Onofrio while he was here? Maybe because he would not have been the first head coach to call the plays for one side of the football. It happens all the time. If he's such a great defensive mind, and he seems to be, he should have been able to, as the CEO of this program, he should have been able to realize, I need to take the reins of that defense myself if I'm that good at it, and the guy that I employ is not. So, listen, I will make no apologies to Al Golden, but I got nothing against seeing him succeed as a defensive coordinator, but he was not a good head coach here. Bottom line. All right, so welcome the new Canes to the U. As I mentioned, I'm going to be doing post-game coverage tonight on the Locked On Network. I'm not sure if it'll be on this YouTube channel. It's definitely going to be on the Locked On ACC channel if you want to check it out there. We'll be doing post-game for Clemson against Texas. I'm going to go watch the rest of that game now, so you can catch me later on the Locked On Podcast Network, which is the place to be, folks. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch, and we will talk to you again next time right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.